Hello, world. Welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. Hello, world, and welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. We're broadcasting live from the Joy Virtual Studio right here in the beautiful Finger Lakes region of New York State. It is so good to be with all of you today. It is Thursday, June 11th, and we have a lot to talk about today on the SJ Show. Of course, live political commentary every day for about 90 minutes. Not left, not right, just the truth. Straight up, no chaser. And as you all know, I am white-knuckled on this roller coaster with all of you. Just another day in paradise here in the United States of America. Just saw on the Twitter that the White House, the Pentagon, is locked down. It is secured. People are running around with gas masks. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if any of you have seen that. But as I mentioned, just another day, just another moment of chaos here in the U.S. Nothing makes anything or any sense right now. And, you know, just trying to get a grasp on the headlines that move very, very, very fast. As you guys know, we're broadcasting live on Rumble. We're live on Twitter, Spreely TV, Roku TV, Apple TV. It looks like everything is in order. If you're watching right now on Rumble, please give us a thumbs up, a like, a share, and a comment. Join us on that live chat. It keeps the algorithm moving, and that helps this show to grow organically. We're thrilled to be growing our audience on YouTube and Substack as well. So welcome to those audiences. I want to say hello to everyone on the chat. Hey, Buskman, good to see you. Chronozone 777, great to see you as well. CM1968 is with us on the live chat. You guys look great today. A nice, lively live chat happening on Rumble. So join that chat. If you're brand new to the SJ Show, say hello. I want to welcome you to that chat. Futurez says, good morning, everyone. Hey, Ralph the Flying Dutchman. Good to see you as well. There's a lot going on. There is a lot going on. I've been posting out on Twitter. We have a bunch to get to today. Very good piece from Jeffrey Tucker that we haven't had a chance to go through in real detail, but we're going to look at it today. The reality of the economic situation in the United States of America since the COVID lockdowns of 2020. And this is a devastating report. It's about 7 pages printed out. Jeffrey Tucker, of course, from the Brownstone Institute. He's an economist. And he is using a new index created by a retired financier. He's an independent intellectual out of Madrid. His name is Tom Elliott. And he has created something called the Reality Index. It is a measure of GDP and inflation and wages. It is a measure of the economic reality for regular people versus the GDP index or the typical measure that they use to, or the typical standards that they use to measure inflation. And as we know, and we've been reporting on this for a decade, you know, the way that the federal government measures wages, labor, inflation, the GDP output, all of those things is largely manipulated in a variety of ways. Jeffrey Tucker goes into a few of those manipulations in this piece. The title, Since Lockdowns, 12%. We've seen a 12% GDP loss, and 50% of U.S. dollar purchasing power has been stolen. That is in 6 years. Meanwhile, we're getting false news, fake news from both the left and the right-wing news media about the strength of the U.S. economy. It's interesting. You would think that the left, the New York Times, CNN, MSNBC, would be more interested in the manipulations of these leading indicators coming from the Trump administration, any excuse to go at President Trump and to diminish his presidency, you would think that they would use. But this has been largely ignored by both right-wing media and left-wing media, especially when their guy is in a position of power. Notice that conservative media, Fox News, OANN, all of those outlets, Sean Hannity and AM radio, they're ignoring these manipulations regarding inflation and the reality of the economic situation for regular Americans because Trump is in office. Normally, they're screaming about things like that. But this is a devastating piece, and we're going to delve into this today because the headlines are pretty crazy. The wheels are falling off the jalopy in terms of the AI tech bubble. And these are just some of the headlines from some of the independent financial reporters on X. From Norvico Finance, this is his headline: the AI bubble has burst. Now, OpenAI and Anthropic are preparing for a user war and a price war. Chinese AI models are dramatically cheaper. They're forcing US AI companies to cut prices and sacrifice margins to stay competitive. The higher the competition gets, the harder it becomes to justify hundreds of billions in spending on AI and the valuations that were built into those hyped up expectations and speculations. So now we are barreling at warp speed towards IPO. So many of these companies, the AI companies, are going public. SpaceX this Friday is going to go public, and they're looking at a $2 trillion valuation for SpaceX, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. But these AI companies, because everyone is figuring out that there's no ROI, they're bleeding money. They aren't making a profit, and everyone is beginning to figure that out. They are racing towards these high valuations into the trillions so that they can dump their companies on the public through the index. And it's not just that. Donald Trump has now promised to explore investing directly in these companies. And I have that report here. This is from Polymarket. By the way, Polymarket is likely a Trump organization-owned entity. They put out financial news, but there's also betting on financial news. Don Jr. is heavily involved and I believe sits on the board of Polymarket. And this is what they pushed out just in. Trump announces that the government will seek equity stakes in top AI companies to make the public very rich, which is frankly insane. They're now saying that there is a 34% chance that the government takes a stake in Anthropic. So OpenAI, Anthropic, SpaceX, these are these super, super hyped AI companies that don't make any money and are being exposed right now. And as that happens, you now see the government moving in to protect them in a variety of ways and even invest taxpayer dollars. So the federal government will print money, which will increase inflation for all of us. They'll take that money and they'll bail out these massive, worthless AI tech stocks that are all connected to what they call the Magnificent Seven. I would call it the Sinister Seven. So these are the 7 major tech companies that are driving a majority of the growth in the stock market. And all of those companies are at severe, severe risk because of their heavy reliance on these speculative models about AI and these AI companies. So it isn't just Anthropic, OpenAI, and SpaceX that seem to be collapsing right before they go public, which is horrifying, right? But those companies are going to impact the big 7 as well because they're all engaged in circular investing, basically investing in each other to bump up revenues, but it's not real. And so now the federal government is getting in on that. Donald Trump promising to invest, AKA print a bunch of money to bail them out. The only people that is going to hurt are the American people, because we will then experience another round of ratcheted up inflation, as they're telling us there's no inflation today. So this piece from Jeffrey Tucker, it relates to what we're talking about in terms of the news of the day. This is from Barchart, the beginning of the end. There are so many signals out there, and Ed Dowd is going to be with us tomorrow. He's much more versed in all of this than I am. We're going to have a layman's discussion today about what we're seeing. It's absolutely tragic that I'm one of the only conservative / independent voices that is really focusing on this. I've been focusing on this for many, many weeks, but we've seen the writing on the wall, to be honest, for many years. It just seems as if we are approaching a tipping point. Maybe that's why they're running some kind of false flag at the Pentagon right now to distract us from that. And yes, I saw you on the live chat, horrifying. Belfast is burning as the revolt, the revolution begins. Horrifying attempted beheading in Ireland. I saw that yesterday, and absolutely horrifying. The immigration problem in Ireland, it's interesting. Michael Yon has been mentioning for quite some time. He's been saying to people, keep an eye on what is happening in Dublin, what is happening in Ireland. Ireland has been impacted the most in the world when it comes to the forced migration, the importation of millions upon millions of what were illegal immigrants. Now they're just migrants. They're flooding the population, and it's creating complete chaos. And that is now beginning to spill out. So we'll keep an eye on what is happening in Ireland, of course, and maybe we should consider getting Michael Yon in again here on the SJ Show. But this is from Barchart. Again, we're going to be focusing on the economic situation here and all of the ways that we are being lied to and gaslit about the economy. Sorry, that is my phone. I'll turn that right off. This is from Barchart, the beginning of the end. They ask, banks are now rejecting a $6 billion loan from SoftBank. SoftBank is the bank that works with these AI tech companies. So this is a signal about the strength of that bubble. And this is the report. SoftBank attempt to get a $6 billion open AI margin loan is now stalling. So these AI companies are needing to take out an enormous amount of debt just to keep operations going. They're also laying people off in record numbers as well. So that's as they're moving towards trillion-dollar valuations, which makes no sense. And we're going to get into that. We're going to look specifically at SpaceX, which is Elon Musk's company, which is set to go public with the IPO this Friday. And so we'll take a look at what's going on with SpaceX to try to understand what is also happening with these other AI companies. But this is the takeaway. SoftBank Group Corp talks with potential creditors to raise at least $6 billion from a margin loan backed by its OpenAI stake has stalled, people familiar with the matter have said. The company is considering various fundraising options, according to the people who asked not to be identified, discussing private matters, but it's unclear why the margin loans discussion stalled, but SoftBank hasn't elaborated on this. Barchart is asking this question, is it the beginning of the end? They're running out of excuses, and this is why I have said multiple times the wheels are falling off the AI jalopy. Earlier this week, we talked about the surveys conducted by MIT, Rand Corporation, and Gartner predictions. These are all devastating for artificial intelligence and the longevity of it as a major force. There is a use for artificial intelligence, but what everyone is learning is that it's way too expensive, and the cost of compute is erasing any potential productivity increases and also all of the return on investment. In addition to that, the AI slop is actually creating more work for corporations than less as they try to unwind their operations after deploying AI. The most recent was MIT. This survey showed that 95% of enterprise general AI projects have delivered zero return on investment and zero profit and loss impact. So this is not being reported on tragically. And what even more tragic is that these stocks are going to be dumped on the backs of the American people through largely two mechanisms: direct investment by the federal government, a bailout led by Donald Trump of these corporations in the name of the AI arms race. We're also seeing liability protections built in for artificial intelligence companies and companies that are rolling out the data centers, anything involved in tech. I have some information there. And then the third way is opening up, as these three companies set to go public, opening up those stocks to the general public to be forced on, retirement accounts and pensions. So this is really troubling, and everyone needs to be prepared. You need to be having a conversation with your financial advisor. You need to be calling the person who handles your funds or your pensions and asking them, how heavily invested are you in artificial intelligence and the Magnificent Seven, these tech stocks? It's terrible. We also have more betrayals from Donald Trump here. Tom Renz with a great piece that we're going to look at regarding the SAVE Act, which is going down. Donald Trump yesterday said that he was going to pass the SAVE Act, but it looks like that is going to go down. And that was a major, major campaign promise by this administration. Tom Renz has a lot to say about that. And then we are going to get to the Section 2024 of the National Defense Authorization Act being set to pass. This is a must-pass bill. Thomas Massie says that this is treason. It is going to link the United States government and our military perpetually, permanently with the Israeli government and their military through a provision that has been snuck into the must-pass National Defense Authorization Act. So we've got a lot to do today on the SJ Show, and we're gonna get to a lot of that. Buskman, trade the fake Caesar money for God's real money, gold and silver. Yeah, I mean, this is crazy. Look at this headline. Did I print this out? Let's look at some of the other headlines regarding the economy here. This is pretty nuts. This is from Barchart as well. So Elon Musk, in terms of all of the tech bros and all of those involved with the Magnificent Seven, the Sinister Seven, I like to call them, I would say that Elon Musk is probably the biggest star. He probably has the most, in terms of relationship with followers, the most star quality among the people who follow him. I'm not a fan of Elon Musk, but his purchase of Twitter in post-COVID lockdown, I think really impacted his ability to go straight to a large public market and propagandize not only himself, but also his companies. And I would guess that is probably the real reason that Elon Musk purchased Twitter when he did. It was actually twofold. First and foremost, I think that Elon Musk realized that Twitter had some of the most robust and even with all the censorship, organic discourse. It was absolutely the public square. And it's where a lot of people, especially in media, went to have discourse and debate and push out information. And so it's highly influential. And I do believe that Elon Musk, this is just my opinion, but I believe he probably, the whole spiel was that he purchased X or Twitter to save free speech because of all of the censorship post COVID lockdowns during the Biden administration. And in a sense, it happened. I was suspended on Twitter before Elon Musk purchased it. And when he bought it, a whole slew of medical freedom warriors, myself included, Mary Talley Bowden, Naomi Wolf, Jeffrey Tucker, among others, Daniel Horowitz, I believe, was permanently suspended from Twitter. All of us got our Twitter accounts back. And so that ingratiated Elon Musk into the medical freedom movement. because a lot of people from that movement believed that he was a savior. And so he had a lot of goodwill built up in that purchase and then the subsequent opening up of accounts. Now, since taking over Twitter, the algorithm has gone to work, and they're not permanently suspending people anymore, but they are suppressing people. They're suppressing accounts. The algorithm is pushing out accounts that are good for Elon Musk and the people he supports or his companies. And they're suppressing accounts that are bad for Elon Musk. And of course, we know that the AI Grok is also somewhat manipulative. So I think it was a self-serving move for Elon Musk, but it did ingratiate him into the most robust freedom first movement in the country. And that was the anti-lockdown movement and the medical freedom movement. And so I think in addition to that, though, this was an opportunity for him to use X, which he renamed Twitter into X, and to use that to promote propaganda that would increase the valuations of his holdings and also give him power with government officials. I also believe that Elon Musk purchased Twitter to use it as a tool to manipulate the elections and help Donald Trump get elected in 2025. So, I think that was the real reason behind X, but Elon has really used X to hype up AI, to hype up just the entire concept that AI and robotics will take over everything. It's the wave of the future. We need the artificial intelligence race war to compete with China. And it resulted in Trump's administration. We reported here on the SJ show in 2024. I said to you, it looks as if the tech bros have purchased Donald Trump's campaign and they're going to deliver the election for him. And it looks as if Donald Trump has spent the better part of the first year and a half of his administration paving the way for these tech stocks to be hyped and to be prepared to go to the open market for initial public offering with an insanely ridiculous valuation so that the insiders can get out before the public gets in. And then they're going to take their profits. And that's already happening. But so, Elon Musk has star power. And this is just an insane headline from Barchart. SpaceX IPO is now whipping Musk fans into a frenzy. This is a report. Annie Watts, she lives in Manhattan. And apparently, and this is a layperson, these are general investors. These are retail investors. So right now, the inside investors who rode the wave up, they got in early and they benefited from all of the hype, all of the speculation, all of the government involvement, the president of the United States using the bully pulpit, plus legislation, plus executive orders, plus emergency declarations to make everything very easy for the Magnificent Seven. So all of the people who have been at the beginning of this, the privileged investors, those who benefit from the insider information, who have been riding the wave up for the past 3 years, who are anticipating these $1 trillion valuations in the initial public offerings. And, they're sweating, hoping that people don't figure this out before it happens, right? They're getting ready to exit. They're going to cash out. In fact, a lot of them are already cashing out. And as that happens, the retail investors like Annie Watts in New York City are whipped up into a frenzy, thinking that if they invest, they are going to benefit from these $1 trillion valuations. Many are suspecting that the moment that happens, that's when the rug pull happens. But Annie, according to this report, has saved up $6,500 in cash to buy stock in SpaceX. This is Elon Musk's company, in the initial public offering on Friday, which is insane. She even tried to borrow money from a friend and also tried to get a $5,000 loan from a bank to go out and buy as much SpaceX stock as humanly possible. And in this piece pushed out by Barchart, they talk about Elon Musk and all of his fans who are racing to be involved in the IPO. In addition, it appears that certain retirement accounts, 401ks, and pensions could be invested in these worthless stocks in the early days after the IPO. Now, listen to these numbers, and this is insane. This is insane. SpaceX valuation, they're looking at this point 1.75 trillion with a T. Elon Musk is looking to get that valuation up to $2 trillion. Their revenue, and this isn't even talking about their losses, their revenue, okay, last year was $18.7 billion. Now, to put that in context, Walmart, when they had their, you know, when you look at the Walmart valuation today, right? 1.5 trillion. So SpaceX is double the valuation right now of Walmart, a major brick and mortar retailer, okay, with hundreds of millions of customers. Walmart valued at 1 trillion, SpaceX valued at 2 trillion. SpaceX doesn't make any money, no profit, okay? In fact, SpaceX is losing money. Their revenue for last year was $18.7 billion. Walmart, in comparison, had a revenue of $681 billion. So in what world does does SpaceX have a valuation that is double the valuation of one of the biggest and most successful corporations in the world, Walmart, when they have literally like 1% of the revenue, and they're posting losses every quarter? So, and that's a great question, Swavek. What has SpaceX created to give value in an economy? I don't know what SpaceX does. Does anyone know? And this is a great question for the audience. Does anyone know what SpaceX does? Because SpaceX is going public on Friday, and that means that your pension, your retirement are going to be at risk if it hits the index. Okay? Does it, and they make no money. It's insane. It's insane. So poor Annie Watts, I hope she gets some good financial advice in the next couple days, because I'm not making predictions here, but this does not look good. Here's another headline. The housing market is the most unaffordable it has ever been in U.S. history. That's also from Barchart. Here's another one. Fear and greed index in the United States of America for the stock market is about an inch away from extreme fear. The U.S. national debt, here's another one, 64 trillion in less than 10 years. And as you guys know, inflation is now clocking in at 4.2%. It's double the predictions of the Federal Reserve. And by the way, Trump says he loves it. He loves inflation. Inflation's great, right? Unaffordable housing. By the way, that 4.2% is mainly energy costs. Thank you, Iran war and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz and Trump's tariffs. All three of those combined have created an energy crisis for average Americans. They can't afford their electric bills, their heating bills. So that contributed to the doubling of the CPI. In addition, food prices, right? And also, of course, housing. So we can't buy our food. We can't afford our rent. We can't pay our electric bills. But we are prepared to make Elon Musk a very, very, very rich man. Interesting. 2 years ago, it was predicted that Elon Musk would be the world's first trillionaire. And when you have the president of the United States of America and an entire Congress in your pocket and under your control, it's not hard to become a trillionaire because you cheat. And they're cheating in a ton of ways. SpaceX plus Starlink equals surveillance, says Mav 2022. Yeah, you know, it's hard to know what is going to happen here. They're manipulating the markets in such an insane way that, and certainly, you know, a lot of the insiders are talking about the surveillance state. And, you know, it certainly does make a lot of money. I guess if the federal government enslaves all of their people and subject us all to a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week surveillance state with flock cameras and data centers and biometric, surveillance, cameras in our homes, cameras on our streets, spying us through our phones, our computers, our devices. I suppose that could be highly lucrative for the big companies that help the government subjugate and suppress their people, right? But that doesn't mean you're making any money. And see, that's the big picture. That's the big story. There's a complete disconnect from what is happening with all of you in your own homes. And that's why this piece by Jeffrey Tucker is really important, and we're going to go through it. They're lying to us about the economic reality, and more Americans are beginning to understand that. But what they're aiming for is a consolidation of money and power unlike anything we have ever seen in this country. It started with the lockdowns of 2020, the single largest transfer of wealth from the poor and middle class to an elite 1% that we have ever seen. And that is detailed in Jeffrey Tucker's piece from Brownstone, which we're going to go over in just a moment. That is going to pale in comparison in terms of what they're looking to do as they aim to collapse the US economy. And that's coming too. Because when the Magnificent Seven go down, they're already out. They've already clocked in their gains. It's going to be dropped on all of us. They'll be in their private bunkers, on their private islands, outside of the United States of America with their fortunes. It is the rest of us who are going to be left with the bag in these worthless companies. And so that, in my opinion, is the biggest story in the United States of America today. And we're going to continue to cover this. Tomorrow, Ed Dowd joins us in the Joy Virtual Studio. Ed is a former BlackRock investment manager. He is absolutely brilliant. He was a truth teller during the dark days of COVID, and he's going to explain a lot of this in a much better way than I ever can. So make sure you guys tune in tomorrow live with Ed Dowd. With that being said, we are going to go to a quick break. When we come back, we're going to dive in to this piece from Jeffrey Tucker. Since the lockdowns, we have lost, the average American consumer has lost half of the US dollar purchasing power. That's insane. And that's using a new reality index that takes away all of the manipulations and all of the ways that they lie to us when the government calculates inflation and GDP and replaces it with a true to life valuation. And the results are absolutely stunning. I do want to hear from all of you on the live chat. So if you have questions, if you have comments, if you have stories you want to talk about, I want to hear from you today on the live chat. I'm going to be checking it out as I go to break, but keep it tuned right here. We'll be back in a moment right here on the Shannon Joy Show. Hey everyone, I just wanted to take a moment to thank one of my longtime friends, associates, my financial advisor, and a beloved sponsor of the Shannon Joy Show, Don Polano over at PCM and Associates. Don Polano, as many of you know, was the very first Shannon Joy Show advertiser almost 12 years ago, and he's been with us ever since. I trust Don Polano. He manages some of my assets and my retirement fund, and he's offering his services to all of you. He can take clients anywhere in the country and even across the globe over at PCM and Associates. And as you guys know, it is so important today. There's so much volatility and chaos. You need a human being, a person that you trust, and a person that shares your values. And that's Don Polano at PCM and Associates. So if you are looking for someone to help you manage your retirement or have investment advice, please consider calling Don Polano over at PCM and Associates. His number, 1-800-536-1368. That's 1-800-536-1368. And of course, you can go to PCMPolano.com. That is PCMPolano.com to learn about all of his services and get in contact with his team. Again, so thankful for Don Polano at PCM and Associates. And I think that you are really going to appreciate his services. So that number again, 1-800-536-1368 for a financial advisor that you can trust. When you are shopping at the Wellness Company, make sure that you use the JOY promo code. It's going to get you lots of goodies, free shipping, a percentage off of your order every single time, whether it's an emergency kit or ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, whether it's a second opinion. So many people are benefiting from the telehealth that is provided at the Wellness Company. If you don't trust the opinion of your doctor, if you want a second opinion, if you don't trust a diagnosis, this is a way for you to go out, take control of your own health. You can get your own second opinion at the Wellness Company. The emergency medical kits are absolutely amazing. The contagion kit, every American needs an emergency medical kit in their home. It is an amazing source of peace of mind. You will have the life-saving prescriptions that you need, antibiotics, things like ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. Sometimes in an emergency situation, certain medications are hard to get on purpose. You don't have to worry about that when you are prepared with that emergency kit. In fact, one of the listeners of the Shannon Joy Show mentioned that she purchased her emergency care kit about 8 months ago and has already used it 3 times. How amazing is that? Sometimes you just need access to that prescription. You don't have time to get to the doctor. It's such an easy process. You go to twc.health/joy. That's twc.health/joy. And you sign up. You have a consultation with one of the Wellness Company doctors. They work out all of your prescriptions, get them ready for you. You assemble the kit, and it is in your home on your doorstep about a week and a half later. It is such an easy process. And with the Joy promo code, you're going to get $60 off your emergency kit. It is worth every penny. People absolutely love it. And you'll get $60 off plus free shipping when you go to twc.health/joy. That's twc.health/joy, and absolutely use that JOY promo code because it's a huge discount. Welcome back, everyone, to the Shannon Joy Show. And as you know, I'm so thankful for our friends over at the Wellness Company. They have been great partners with the Shannon Joy Show and very, very valued sponsors. So, of course, JOY, use that promo code every time you shop at the Wellness Company. Another headline here. Did you guys know that Social Security, the OASDI Trust Fund, is going to go broke by 2032. That means a 17% cut in benefits for recipients in 2034 and a 38% cut by 2100, meaning that young kids who are, young people who are investing in Social Security are going to get about $6 or are going to get about, 40% less than they invest by the time they go to cash out. And this is going to, 2034, that's just around the corner. This is going to impact so many Americans. Again, it's the same, and they're not doing anything about it. Mike Johnson, the GOP leader of the House of Representatives, has gone on record saying that they're prepared. They're going to be cutting a lot of services. They're going to be cutting Social Security. They're going to be cutting Medicare and Medicaid. And, as a free market, libertarian leading conservative, I am not about government welfare. I'm not about handouts, but something like Social Security, this is something that we have paid into our entire lives. And the fact that it's really compromised, and they're just going to ramp it down, right? They're just going to ramp up inflation, the hidden tax of inflation, and ramp down benefits, suppress the free market, make it impossible for Americans to get ahead so that they can't create businesses or create wealth. They're going to jack up the price of housing, jack up the price of energy, jack up the price of everything, and basically just squeeze us out over time. And that's what it feels like to me, a slow boiling of the frog in the warm pot of water, right? You turn up the heat a little bit at a time so that people don't realize how badly they're being squeezed. Only people are realizing how badly they're being squeezed right now. That's why we're having an awakening in this country, right? But it seems as if that's what they're going to do. Now, they do have to have another crisis in order to get us in to the digital ID and the digital currency. And so they're going to have to do some type of rug pull, whether it's World War III or a severe energy crisis, maybe a famine, maybe another scamdemic. I tend to think that it is going to be financial. And I think these trillion-dollar valuations and all of the scheming that's been done over the past 1.5 years by Donald Trump and the tech bros is setting us up for the extreme highs of the market. Then they're all going to get out and then they're going to crash it on our heads. And then everyone's going to be so broke that the American people, retirees, and the poor and everyone are going to be begging the government to save them in some way. In the same way they were begging the government to create a vaccine so that we could come out of the pandemic. They need to create a crisis in order to get us to accept whatever the next atrocity is committed on the American people by our own government. That's where I see things today. And this is why people have to be very careful about where they're investing, and really honestly keep an eye. This stock market thing is like, it makes me so nervous. It makes me so nervous. It's insane. And SpaceX valuation, again, $2 trillion. Walmart's only valued at $1 trillion. And they do 150 times the revenue. By the way, SpaceX is losing money. Now, many are of the mindset that SpaceX plus Starlink plus the data centers plus Palantir, OpenAI, all of these tech stocks, this is going to be the mechanism by which the federal government and the corporate overlords, the tech fascists, control the people. And so if that's the case, if they succeed in forcing us onto their system of digital currency, digital ID, and mass surveillance, then indeed they will be very rich. They will have their $2 trillion valuations. But that's only if they're able to completely collapse everyone else. So that's kind of where we're at. They can't win. SpaceX, OpenAI, NVIDIA, the Magnificent Seven, none of this works unless they partner with the government to take over everything and to surveil all of us and to wrap all of us into their system. So it's either America goes full techno-fascist, right? And then, they'll have their valuations, or we resist against this. People wake up faster and they get out and avoid, at least enough people avoid the rug pulls. I have no idea how this is going to go. Like I say, every day I am white knuckled on this roller coaster with all of you. And so, get your garden going, get a little bit of land, make sure you have some cash on hand. Personally, I am instructing my financial advisor. I don't believe I'm in any tech stocks at all. I don't think I'm in any tech stocks at all. And this is not financial advice. The flock market, exactly. I see you. Hey, does anyone have any questions? I want to say hi to everyone on the live chat. Questions or comments? Questions or comments? We're going to do that now, and then we're going to get to this piece. We have two things we're going to get to. Absolute treason. Donald Trump and the Republicans slipping into the National Defense Authorization Act, Section 224. It is the unholy alliance of the Israeli military and the U.S. military, and it is going to be impossible to get out of this if they get away with this. So we're going to look at that. Also, a great piece from Tom Renz, a post that he pushed out on Twitter, and then we're going to get to this Jeffrey Tucker piece about what real Americans are experiencing. Those of you who are out there watching today and you're making more money than ever, but you are not getting ahead, right? You can't make ends meet. You're finding it harder and harder to pay your bills, to meet your obligations, more impossible to grow your business, even more impossible to survive. If you're feeling that, and I know that millions of you are feeling that, I know that the headlines are saying different things on the right and the left. Both sides are riddled with lies and deceptions and gaslighting, to serve their political agendas. But I think the American people know what's going on. And if you are sensing that and feeling that, you're going to understand why with this piece. It's a must read by Jeffrey Tucker, Brownstone Institute. It's one of those pieces every so often I'll dive into a piece because it's just that good. And it gives you a greater understanding of how they're manipulating those numbers. And also it helps people understand what their larger agendas are. Bill Benz is with us on the live chat. Is anybody actually looking at the Epstein files specifically cited by that fella that Shannon interviewed at the Massey rally in Kentucky? Bill, I was just thinking about those provisions. That was Hunter Alexander. He has a huge following on Instagram and TikTok, and he mentioned those files. I'm going to give him a shout today after the show and see if he can't send them to me, because I am actually curious about those. Big news about the Epstein files, by the way. The New York Times has a bombshell piece. I have not had a chance to go through it completely, but I've seen the overview, and apparently it was an incredibly sophisticated, layered operation by Donald Trump's cabinet to suppress and refuse to release the Epstein files. It was Susie Wiles and Pam Bondi and Dan Bongino and Kash Patel and J.D. Vance all working together behind the scenes to figure out a way to deceive the American people into thinking that, first and foremost, the Epstein files had been released, and secondly, to deceive the American people into believing that there was nothing really there once they were released in a limited way. And all of this went down because Donald Trump refused to talk about it. Donald Trump made very clear to his entire cabinet he did not want those files released, and he did everything he could to keep them from releasing those files. And they did everything they could to keep those files under wrap. It was only because of Tom Massie and Ro Khanna, after the entire propaganda campaign was deployed by Trump and his cabinet. A couple weeks later, a few months later, Tom Massie, Ro Khanna, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and a handful of others succeeded in forcing their hands and forcing them to release those files. But the New York Times has uncovered the operation, and it was to deceive the American people, and specifically Donald Trump's own base. Remember the binders, the influencers who were paid to come to the White House and wave around Pam Bondi's empty binders, trying to trick their audience, the MAGA voters, into believing that the Epstein files had been released. Remember Pam Bondi saying they're on my desk, right? All of that was a calculated deception by Donald Trump's cabinet so that they could serve him, because he wanted those files suppressed. Thank you for reminding me about that, Bill Benz. And I will take a look at Hunter Alexander's piece, because that's pretty crazy. That is pretty crazy. And that leads me to Tom Renz's piece. The other thing that Trump supporters and voters thought he was going to do was to secure the elections. And apparently, after saying that he was going to pass the SAVE Act, Donald Trump is now saying, or at least the GOP is saying, they won't pass the SAVE Act or prosecute voter fraud. And this is what Tom Renz had to say about that. He said, the real reason that the GOP won't pass the SAVE Act or prosecute voter fraud is that they use it too. And he linked to a video of election computers flipping a vote. He said the Republicans use the same election fraud as the Democrats to make sure only the chosen candidates are elected. Regardless of who you vote for, the uniparty wins. And that's the dirty secret, is that both Democrats and Republicans, Trump included, need to keep the elections and the voting machines as rigged as possible, so that they can continue to hand power to the uniparty. And this is one of the reasons that I am boycotting, at the very least, federal elections in 2026, because I do not believe that we can trust these voting machines. I believe that we need to go back to paper ballots, hand cast and publicly counted by hand, organically by humans in front of all humans. I believe that's the only way that we can trust any type of electoral system in the US moving forward, because I agree with Tom Renz. The Republicans and the Democrats use the same election fraud to make sure only the chosen candidates are elected. And regardless of who you vote for, the uniparty wins. He goes on to say the secret is that the Democrats are only there as a foil right now. The GOP has had the majority in Congress and the White House, and they have had all the power. I like to call that trifecta power, meaning 2 years of doing whatever you want. And rather than Trump and the Republicans making good on their promises to MAGA voters and the American people, Trump and the Republican Congress have chosen to line the pockets of their friends and family, to engage in pump and dump and insider trading, to wage wars that no Americans want, and to also line the pockets and prepare to hand trillions of dollars to their tech overlords, the tech bros who put them in office in 2025 to begin with. That's what they've done. And Tom Renz, in a devastating tweet, lays it out in stark terms. The Republicans and Donald Trump from 2025 through today have had trifecta power, meaning all the power in Washington, D.C., and they have failed to pass election reform. They have failed to prosecute anyone for election fraud. They have failed to stop foreign wars while starting more of them. They have failed to do anything to fix Obamacare. They have failed to bring any accountability to the COVID regarding the COVID scamdemic. They have continued to push mRNA shots. They have rolled out data centers, flock cameras, track and trace tech, and the infrastructure for a privatized version of central banking digital currencies, coupled with a mandatory digital ID. And frankly, that's the only way that Donald Trump would pass a SAVE Act. The only way you would see that is if he could smuggle in a digital ID and biometric scanning as mandatory for voting. They weren't able to sneak that in. They pulled it out of the SAFE Act legislation after people like myself and Tom Renz made a big deal about it. But that isn't in there, and so I agree. They won't pass it. They have done nothing to prosecute the leftists actually behind J6. They have failed to deport illegals. They have failed to prosecute Epstein and his Epstein's co-conspirators. And they have essentially failed to follow through on anything that we elected them for, said Tom Renz, medical freedom warrior, friend of the Shannon Joy Show, and huge Donald Trump supporter in 2024. He goes on to say the fight between Democrats and Republicans isn't real. They are both controlled by the same money and use the same election fraud to control the handles of power in this country. I'm grateful for the handful of good people in government who are still waging a fight, but until we, the people, demand more and realize that both parties are actually one uniparty, we will not see real change. Thank you, Tom Renz, for so eloquently stating what we have been saying here on the Shannon Joy Show for over 10 years. I am always thankful when brilliant, wonderful, good people understand the reality of the times that we live in today. And Tom Renz is one of those people. He is a guest on the SJ Show, and I agree with him 100% here. Thank you so much for that donation, Chronozone 777. Shannon, you are my Joan of Arc. Oh gosh, I don't think so. Badly. I don't think my show is any good. I'm so bad at this, honestly. Today's been a tough day. Tech has been difficult today. I was supposed to have an amazing guest on, And you guys know Ainsley Brown. She is the amazing young woman in Georgia who's fighting back against the Georgia data centers and trying to save her mom's home among other homes, 300 other homes in her town. And I messed something up. I got the timing wrong. And I reached out to her and I lost her as a guest today. So I'm like, ugh. And then I've had a ton of tech difficulties. I was getting ready to get the show going today, and that dreaded rainbow pinwheel. Do you guys know, any of you who are MacBook users or you use a MacBook Pro, it's that rainbow pinwheel when the computer starts getting really, really slow and then shutting down. And oh my gosh, I didn't even know if I was going to be able to do the show today. So it's been a rough day. It's been a rough couple weeks. Self-producing is kind of like tying my brain, half my brain behind my back when I'm doing the show because I'm focusing on other things. And executive functioning is not my strongest point. So getting my guests lined up, getting them in on the show, and then prepping for the show, and then running the business, it's just a lot. So I really appreciate those kind words, Chronozone 777, and your contribution, $20. You don't know how much those contributions mean to me. Those of you who support the Shannon Joy Show directly through my website, theshannonjoy.com, theshannonjoy.com. I so appreciate all of you. Mr. Worthless Eater with a comment, any degree of oversight would improve our elections. It is so crappy now they can do whatever they want. We do not have a handle on the voting machines. We do not have a handle on our elections. Doesn't matter which party is in office. And I think they both benefit from it. That's why neither party ever does anything about it, right? When Donald Trump loses, he screams about rigged elections, right? And when he wins, he has nothing to say about rigged elections. When the Democrats lose, they scream about rigged elections. When they win, they have nothing to say about rigged elections. But I think the rigging really is the Democrats and the Republicans working together to keep out anyone who is sane, intelligent, ethical, believes in the Constitution. It's the boxing out at the primary level where they do their dirty business. I think that's where the real fraud comes into play. And then they use the fraud to distract people, to send people down rabbit holes for years, decades. I mean, how much time and energy have Republican groups and organizations and interest groups, how much time has Republican and conservative media spent on analyzing election fraud and investigating election fraud and lobbying for investigations regarding election fraud? How many documentaries have been made by the Republicans about election fraud? I'm talking to you, Dinesh D'Souza, and 1,000 Mules or 4,000 Mules or whatever it is. How many reports have been completed and run on major conservative news outlets about election fraud? It is, I mean, Groundhog Day political hell. The same story over and over and over, right? And I think it's on purpose. Crazy. Mr. Worthless Eater. Yes, Shannon, you're right. They both benefit from the status quo. Absolutely. Mark the Regan, thank you for those kind words. I appreciate you. We're going to go to a quick break. What do you guys say? So thank you, Tom Renz. I need to have him on the show again. Again, tomorrow, Ed Dowd will be with us to talk about the incoming pump and dump and all of the fraud on Wall Street and in Washington, D.C. So make sure that you tune in tomorrow for Ed Dowd. I already sent his confirmation, so hopefully I won't mess that up. And then when we come back, we're also going to look at what Tom Massie is calling treason. I agree. I mentioned this earlier this week on the show. We haven't gotten to this Guardian article. It was a op-ed written by Eli Clifton and Ian Lustig on the Section 2024 of the NDAA, which essentially binds the United States military with the Israeli military forever. Okay? Forever. It's insane. It is so bad. As I mentioned, Tom Massie calls it treason. We're going to look into that. And then we are going to look into this piece by Jeffrey Tucker, which is really good. If you feel like you have no money and you can't get ahead, it's because that's the reality of the situation for nearly every American. It started in earnest with the lockdowns of 2020. and it has only gotten worse. In fact, we are in, many would argue, a prolonged recession. I would argue we're in a full-scale depression, and we're watching a full-scale plundering by the elite class, the predator class, the billionaire class, working together with the federal government to pound that nail, that final nail in the coffin of the American free market, and take away all opportunity to pursue happiness in this country. That's what they're going for, in my opinion. We come back, we're going to look at this piece by Jeffrey Tucker in Brownstone. Keep it tuned right here. If you have a question or a comment, now is the time to plug that in. We'll be back in a minute right here on The Shannon Joy Show. All right, make sure that every time you shop at the satellite phone store, sat123.com/joy, that is sat123.com/joy, you are using the JOY promo code. That is going to get you at least 10% off your entire order. And if you're looking at products like generators or solar panels, if you're looking at a satellite phone and you're going to get a satellite phone subscription, those could be upwards over thousands of dollars. So that 10% discount is going to be huge. But they do have the entire line of Faraday products, the dark bags. So these are amazing. The Faraday technology not only protects you from harmful EMF radiation, but it also protects your phone from an EMP attack or any type of breakdown. So great products. The Faraday collection also shields you, protects you from the prying eyes of the federal government or the big tech bros. That's right. When you drop your phone or your device into a satellite phone store Faraday bag or backpack, you're off the grid. You are untraceable. They can't find you. And it gives you that added element of privacy while also protecting you from those harmful EMF radiation rays. So just really great technology, the best out there, and at the best prices when you use that JOY promo code. So sat123.com/joy. That is sat123.com/joy. He also said this, it looks like the correction in the tech stocks, so not just Bitcoin, but that bubble that we are talking about, has finally begun. That's bad news for Bitcoin and the tech stocks, as the tech rally was its main support. As we see the tech stocks begin to sell off, Bitcoin should crash. Gold will likely head in the opposite direction as investors now finally begin to buy a true safe haven asset. We haven't seen huge gains in gold and silver because the dominance of the PSYOP, the marketing campaign, the propaganda campaign that has been waged against the American people and against the markets over the past 3 years, hyping up the AI bubble relentlessly. I've never seen anything like it. At some point, people are going to realize, and investors are going to realize, retail investors and institutional investors are going to realize that there's no there there. And everybody is realizing it now. I'm seeing it all over my social media. Everything that we told you here on the Shannon Joy Show is coming true. And this is when people move into safe haven assets. Safe haven assets for, the entirety of human history have been gold and silver, predominantly gold. If you do not have a gold strategy, I want to highly encourage you to go to shiftgold.com/joy. That is shiftgold.com/joy ASAP, like today, to get your metal strategy in place. At Shift Gold, you can buy and sell physical gold and silver. You can explore hedging against the chaos with a gold or silver-backed IRA. And he even has an option for tokenized gold, which gives you the ability to buy physical gold and silver. You don't take custody of it, but you can buy it in smaller chunks. So you can allocate $50, $100, $200 a month to that tokenized gold. And as soon as you hit a certain threshold, you can trade it in and you can actually take custody of your physical gold and silver. It's a great option for people who don't have enough money to meet those reserves if you're buying physical gold and silver, and for younger investors, people who want to begin to hedge. So that's shiftgold.com/joy, shiftgold.com/joy. Welcome back, everyone, to the Shannon Joy Show. It is the final segment of the Ask Jay Show, and we are going to get into this piece from Jeffrey Tucker. We'll do Section 2024 of the National Defense Authorization Act after this. But I did link this in the show notes of the Shannon Joy Show a couple days ago. The title here: Since lockdowns, a 12% GDP loss, writes Jeffrey Tucker at Brownstone. Half of the US dollar purchasing power has been stolen over the past 6 years. This is a stunning piece, an absolutely stunning piece. And it's reinforcing what everyone has been experiencing, what people have been talking about, the disconnect between what we're hearing from the federal government, what we're hearing from left and right-wing news media, what we're hearing from Wall Street in terms of the stock market. Best economy ever, highest valuations ever. The Dow is over 51,000. All of these companies making a ton of money. Everything's great. The economy is great. Donald Trump loves inflation. Oh, super secret plan, by the way. We've been smuggling oil from Iran over the past couple of weeks. That was in a recent press conference with Donald Trump, right? So no problems here. Everything is great, and everyone gets super excited for these big IPOs for SpaceX and OpenAI, Anthropic, you name it. Okay, so that's what we're getting fed. That's the propaganda that they are pummeling the American people with. But the American people understand that things are not so rosy, and this piece gives you all of the information you need to make that case. It was written by Jeffrey Tucker, and this is what he has to say. He says, many of us have had the intuition that the economic damage from 2020, including industrial stoppages, monetary printing, turning on the printing machine, supply chain disruptions, extended school closures, and general population demoralization was in fact greater than the official statistics indicate. And what follows, he says, will shore up this institution, now using techniques and numbers from an innovative project called realityindex.com. So I want to encourage you guys to go and check them out, realityindex.com. It is an index created by a fellow named Tom Elliott out of Madrid. The site owner is an independent intellectual, writes Jeffrey Tucker, out of Madrid, Tom Elliott. And he has deployed, using AI, tools to wholly reconstruct price indices in a way that is consistent with actual prices. His results are absolutely eye-popping. Jeffrey Tucker has examined them, and we're going to go over them in this piece. He goes on to say here about the reality of the situation that we are in. We've never come out of the recession of 2020. And that was a government-created recession, which I would now call a depression, a prolonged period of time of higher prices, less economic prosperity, and a lowering of the GDP and output over the past 6 years. And Jeffrey Tucker makes that case here. He just doesn't call it a depression. He calls it a rolling set of recessions with no real breathing room in between. Like little pops, little glimmers of hope here and there, but nothing substantive, nothing substantial. And one of the biggest elements of this rolling set of recessions, which I would call depression, is that we have also seen the largest transfer of wealth from the market, from poor and middle class Americans and small to medium sized American businesses than in any time in history. Okay, so he goes on to say, it's true that the official data is bad enough, showing a 26% loss in purchasing power, slow growth in output, and only marginal improvements in real outcome. The labor participation rate and worker population ratio never fully recovered and continued to fall. So that's the government's official story. It's bad even if you look at their own numbers. They're just not pushing out their own numbers, and the numbers they push out, they're spinning, or they're just full-scale lying about. right? But the official data, if you dig hard enough for it and you find it, is bad in and of itself. And they're saying, like I said, 26% loss in purchasing power. He goes on to say, and this is according to our government's own information, output has been lackluster. It's supposedly running at 2.3%, which is about half of the post-war norm for U.S. economic performance. It feels, he writes, like a general downshift. Official data shows a brief recession in 2020, followed by a gradual economic recovery overall. But is this even true? He asks. In 2024, Brownstone Institute did a great study. It was by E.J. Antony and Peter St. Onge. And they concluded in that 2024 study, which we covered here on the Shannon Joy Show, we had Jeffrey in to talk about it. It concluded that we have never really entered a recovery after 2022. We've been in a technical recession since that time. They got this with some limited adjustments of price data bumped up against output data. But his study at the time, writes Jeffrey, was met by brutal attacks, with every critic falling back on official data and doubling the supposed extremism and the conclusion. So they got attacked for that report in 2024, which concluded that we've never come out of the recession. We've never had a period of economic recovery in the U.S. That was in 2024. This new reality index that Jeffrey Tucker has written about makes it even worse. So he goes on to say that, of course, we're left with real questions. Can we believe any of the reports? And I say, absolutely not. How can consumer sentiment be at historic lows, given that the overall data seems to raise loud alarms? And we've seen multiple reports over the past couple weeks, which we've featured here on the SJ Show, about consumer sentiment, about sentiment in general regarding the economy. It is completely in the toilet, and it is completely disconnected from what we're hearing from Washington, D.C. So in light of all of this, an independent intellectual out of Madrid, Tom Elliott, has developed a way to reconstruct price indices in a way that is consistent with actual prices. This is a new study service called the Reality Index. And you can go to their website, realityindex.com, to check it out because it has a ton of information there. And it's extraordinary. This has even caught the attention of the Wall Street Journal, which is great news. And it does raise the possibility that maybe we, the people, can finally get the truth about what's going on in our own economy. It's going to also be highly beneficial for retail investors, for small and medium-sized businesses, for people, for fund managers who do not trust the numbers coming out of the rigged markets, which seem more and more rigged as every day passes. But he goes on, they look at some of the ways in this piece. Jeffrey takes some time to look at many of the ways that they cheat and manipulate the numbers when it comes to inflation and also the GDP. And I'm not going to go into all of them and explain all of them, but he does look at four here. First is rather than, they use the owner's equivalent rent rather than looking at housing prices, the actual prices, and whether they're not being inflated. So they cheat in that way. They also use hedonic adjustments, which are essentially they say, well, this good or service costs 50% more, but the American people are getting 60% more value because the product is better, the service is better, or it's just you're getting more of a return on your investment and that's why you're paying for the higher prices. So it erases the higher price, and it's completely subjective. They manipulate it. And of course, they never use that. They never talk about when they're doing these hedonic adjustments, right? They never talk about when you pay more to get less. And if anyone has experienced a shrinkflation in the past, couple years, where you go to the store and usually, the pack of Oreos that you buy comes with, I don't know, 30 Oreos, they shrink it down. They either make them smaller, or you have few Oreos in the same pack, but you're paying more for it. Hedonic adjustments never apply when you're getting less value while paying more, but they always apply them when they perceive you're getting more value for paying more. So that's pretty shady. They also manipulate medical costs. I'm not going to get into how they do that, but it's extreme manipulation of what we're paying for healthcare. And they also, don't effectively count substitutions, which is, I don't want to get into that as well. That's in addition to eliminating certain things from the basket altogether. Like a lot of the baskets that they use to count inflation or to calculate inflation don't include things that should always be included. Like there are certain inflation calculations that don't include prices for housing and energy or food, which is crazy. So this is the way. I know it's bad. It's bad. K12112. This show is giving me a headache. This world is giving me a headache these days. Anyway, so Jeffrey goes into how they manipulate. This is why they're able to get away with telling you that the economy is great, there's no inflation, everything is good. And they manipulate the GDP as well, which I'm not going to get into. But what is interesting, and the most interesting, is that when you use this new type of calculation, this is where it gets really bad. It's very bad news for everyone except for the 1%. When we use these new calculations with the reality index, it's pretty devastating. Oh my goodness. So what happens when we strip away all of the manipulations and examine actual prices as reported by the Bureau of Labor Statistics without all of the many adjustments that I just mentioned in the last segment? We find that the basket of goods and services that cost $100 in 1980 now cost $515 per the reality index in 2025. The CPI reports only 391. So that means that the real prices have run 32% higher over the last 45 years than the government reports. Over a 55-year window, the reality index ran 54.4 times faster than the CPI, meaning they have erased 50% of our purchasing power. He says another way, consider the loss of purchasing power since 1980. According to the CPI, the loss has been to make $1 in 1980 worth only 26 cents. But according to the reality index, $1 is now only worth 19 cents. And that's only going to continue. It's only getting worse. That's devastating. He says, by any standard, this is a shocking devaluation, and he's absolutely right. And all of this is it became much worse during lockdowns, and now is becoming even worse. Yeah. CJP Rumble. Everything is fine. Everything is fine. Nothing to see here. Everyone go out and get your SpaceX stocks at that $2 trillion valuation that Elon Musk has manipulated. He goes on to say the lockdowns were, for all intents and purposes, very similar to the Great Depression. A massive exogenous shock to commerce accompanied by a huge devaluation of the currency. It amounted to a gigantic transfer of wealth to elites, the largest in history, followed by a destruction of wealth of the middle and lower classes. He goes on, at least during the Great Depression, people knew what was happening. It was officially documented. Our times are different. We have heard nothing over the past 6 years. Nothing except happy talk about the economic recovery. And based on the real data, the opposite has happened, writes Tucker, most tracing to the disastrous lockdowns of 2020. In other words, only 1 in 4 workers has even had a nominal raise in the past 5 years. And they're all now dealing with higher prices for absolutely everything. It's crazy. It's crazy. He goes, we've lived so long with this distorted statistics that it's fascinating to me that the person who finally came up with a good index is an independent data expert living in Spain and not in the United States of America. That in and of itself is very revealing, and I agree. The big picture, and here's the takeaway, and I want to know if you guys are experiencing this as well. The lockdowns, not only nationally, but globally, were far more catastrophic for us economically than has been generally admitted or recognized. It is not unusual in the history of economics for really bad news to emerge years and even decades after a major shock, such as war. But we would rather not wait that long. The crisis is too real, and the public knows about it, even if the official data does not admit it. Lockdowns, he writes, were a kind of war on our population, a deployment of war against we, the people, started by President Trump, continued by Joe Biden, and now the final death blows are being deployed by the second Trump administration. Lockdowns started it, and they are seeking to finish it, I think, in the next couple years. The economic carnage, writes Tucker, might have sliced off half of the purchasing power of the dollar and cut output by as much as 12% in terms of the GDP over 6 years, even as the labor participation rate never recovered and continues to fall. Did COVID kick off a permanent recession? He writes, a kind of permanent recession. How many decades must pass before we admit what has really happened? More precisely, how much longer will it take before the public mind recognizes what they did to us and what they are doing to us today? And it's even worse. He says a rolling recession. I call it a government-inflicted and manufactured on purpose depression. And this is why everyone should be alarmed at what they've done over the past 1.5 years with the Trump administration colluding with the tech bros and private corporations in an unholy alliance, fascism, to set us up for yet another rug pull. And I think that's going to happen potentially sooner rather than later. And that's why we're seeing them fast track. And there's so many ways that they're cheating and paving the way for this. LT Oracle of Truth says we are in a depression for sure. Everywhere I go, I travel all over the country for work. We travel all over the country for my kids' volleyball. We're in cities across America. The cities have never recovered. And I was talking with some of the people we were traveling with. Every city we go to, whether it's Richmond or Cleveland or Columbus or Philadelphia, we've been, again, as I mentioned, all over the country. And over the past 2 to 3 years, I don't think we've seen a recovery in our cities. Many of them look like ghost towns. It looks like the zombie apocalypse in some of those cities. Boarded up windows. Even on the most beautiful day, we were just in Buffalo on Chippewa Street over the weekend. And it used to be this like bustling, thriving, like tons of people. And there were people out, the restaurants were open, but there weren't that many of them. It was a beautiful summer day. I mean, usually this is when Buffalo comes alive. It was perfect weather, Saturday afternoon, and just no one. It's the same in Rochester, New York. It's the same in Syracuse, New York. The country looks really bad from my perspective. And we know, tens of thousands of businesses were put out of business during the lockdowns of 2020. And they're gaslighting us. We don't even talk about 2020 anymore. We don't talk about the crime that was committed against the American people during those lockdowns and that transfer of wealth. So because we let them get away with it in 2020, and even went as far as to elect the guy who started it in the first place, I do believe that they are going to take that, the planners and the controllers, as a signal that they can get away with this again. And I think it's going to be pretty bad. But over the past year and a half, we've seen just so many different ways that the Trump administration, through various mechanisms, legislation, executive orders, emergency declarations, and even direct investments, has really paved the way for this pump and dump. Everything from liability shields for AI companies and data center companies, direct government investments in AI and tech companies. Yesterday, Donald Trump just came out and said that the US government, meaning the American taxpayer, is going to bail out OpenAI, or they won't call it a bailout. He's saying we're going to invest in them, right? So that's just completely fascistic. It's probably illegal, but they're going to do it. They're relaxing rules about what fund managers can invest retirement accounts, pensions, and 401ks in. They've taken guardrails down. They've fast-tracked high valuations for IPOs. That's just recent. Tiffany Cianci talked about that last time she was on the Shannon Joy show. They've had just a whole host of manipulations that have been exclusively beneficial to the AI tech companies and have driven this massive bubble, the tech bubble and the AI bubble. Mod Trend, Brian Young still talks about the transfer of wealth during COVID. Mod Trend, thank you so much. I do not know who Brian Young is, but appreciate that. Thank you. Buskman has this to say: Dayton has prison bars. Oh, that's sad. On business windows in some areas. Breaks my heart. It's true. It's true. The question is, when are the American people going to wake up? When are they going to wake up? And it's clearly not a golden age. We're going to be talking about this with Ed Dowd in more detail tomorrow. There are new disability numbers as well. Ed Dowd became famous during the lockdowns of COVID when he was analyzing the disability numbers and insurance claims. And this was showing that people, they tried to gaslight us into thinking that the COVID shots weren't killing people. They were killing people. They were injuring people. They were making people disabled. The government lied to us about that during the Biden administration, and Ed Dowd was able to dive into those numbers, provided really, really important insight into what was really happening to Americans and regarding our health. And he is now beginning to revert back to his expertise. He was a fund manager for BlackRock. He was an investor. He's brilliant. For many years before he left that position, he provided a great service during the lockdowns, one of those truth tellers. And tomorrow we're going to talk about all of the manipulations that we are seeing in the markets right now. I cannot wait to talk to Ed Dowd about that. Questions or comments? Questions or comments? Mod Trend says that this fellow is on YouTube. Well, Mod Trend, there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people on YouTube. And so I don't have time to watch them all. Yeah, Han Soto 1. 15 days to slow the spread, flatten the curve will be open again by Easter. Man, oh man. Man, oh man. Yeah, it's getting bad out there for sure. Suavek says this: the destruction of America started in 1913. I don't disagree that and that was the creation of the Federal Reserve and everything that happened after that. So yes, Suavek, I don't disagree, but I think that it has accelerated. I think at that time, things were everything moved a lot slower. I think today the difference is that everything is accelerating very quickly because of technology, because of the news cycle, on purpose. It's an onslaught of information, of fire hose in your face every day of conflicting information, propaganda, mistruths, deep fakes, lies, damn lies, and statistics just pummeling the American people every day at a breakneck pace. So that makes it impossible for a human to process all of it. And so I think what we're seeing right now is that acceleration, and it's only gotten worse. So it does feel as if we're building to a crescendo. It feels as if we're approaching, right, the edge of the cliff. Do you guys feel that way? And I know people have been predicting this forever. No one thought that the government could get away with this profligate spending and debt creation, the manipulation of the currency. I mean, this has been happening since we created the Federal Reserve, and then it amplified after we took the US dollar off of the gold standard, and then it amplified again after the federal government put in place protections for, the billionaires and the massive corporations at the expense of the American people. Like it's been the same trajectory. But something about today feels different to me. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm too sensitive. But just insane headlines that you just would never believe even 5 or 10 years ago. And this is what we're going to end on here because we do have to address this. I want to make sure I get this out there because this is something that Shannon says, Mod Trend, he thinks a lot like you. You should look into him. Well, send me a link and maybe I will. Yeah, I see that. Bye-bye. The banks do this like clockwork. They are taking their profits. And what they are doing, they will refinance all those houses again when they prop it back up. I think they will just rug pull the crypto. Yeah, I mean, crypto, yikes, Michael Saylor. Oh my gosh. Bitcoin, oh my gosh. Yeah. KC12, we're all participating in the Omni War, whether we are aware of it or not. Don't disagree. So let's take a look at this, though, before we end. We have what do we have? Okay, we have a couple minutes left. We have about 5 minutes left in the SJ show. This is a Guardian article. Everyone needs to know about this because we have to stop this, okay? I will be talking. We're going to have Tiffany Cianci in the Joy Virtual Studio next week. We'll talk about this with her. The Guardian article written, it's a op-ed by Eli Clifton and Ian Lustig. And it argues that Section 2024 of the National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA, is a trap. Thomas Massie, in a recent interview on Redacted, called this provision treason if passed. It's being pushed by Israel and its U.S. lobby. AIPAC is one of the major players here, and also the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, two organizations that are pushing this provision 224 into the NDAA, which is usually a must-pass bill. It would deeply integrate, argue Clifton and Lustig, the U.S. and Israeli militaries, and also defense industries, making the U.S. more dependent on Israeli technology while shielding the relationship from public scrutiny and congressional oversight. So right now, the government is subsidizing Israel. We're handing them billions and billions of dollars every single year. We're fighting their wars for them. We're funding their wars for them. It's outrageous given the economic situation that the U.S. is in today. It's outrageous. And saying that does not make me or anyone else an anti-Semite. Saying that is just plain common sense. Why are we fighting Israel's war when American citizens are struggling, buried under a devalued dollar, higher inflation taxes, higher energy prices for everything, and a very corrupt government? So what is the justification for starting a new war in Iran on behalf of Israel and funding Israel's actions in Gaza and now Lebanon? Israel's now taking out and absolutely demolishing Lebanon as well as Gaza. They got away with it in Gaza. Now they're moving on to Lebanon. What did Lebanon do to Israel? And everyone's looking the other way. And they're committing atrocities. They're committing atrocities in both Gaza and Lebanon. Why are we fighting a war in Iran for Israel? Why are we sending them billions of dollars? Okay. Now, today, Congress has to approve the deployment of those dollars. The House of Representatives has the power of the purse. And so the money that goes to Israel has to be approved, and often it can be debated, and there is scrutiny involved. Well, this Section 2024 of the NDAA wants to take all of that and bury it into defense spending, which is a black budget, which we have no ability to take a look at. So this is pretty important. It creates a United States-Israel Defense Technology Cooperation Initiative. This includes bilateral research and development, co-production of weapons, joint ventures, licensing agreements, integration of Israeli tech into U.S. supply chains, network integration, data fusion, and more across areas like AI, quantum computing, cyber, lasers, drones, and more. It appoints a senior Pentagon executive agent to oversee and accelerate this. Now, it stems from a stalled U.S. Futures Act. It was a bipartisan bill in the House and the Senate, and language was inserted into the massive NDAA bill instead, bypassing, this is the key, normal committee processes. Pro-Israel groups endorsed and lobbied for it heavily. So they were not able to get the Transparent Futures Act passed, even though it had bipartisan support in the House and the Senate. And so rather than take that as a clue from the American people that we do not want to integrate our military with this nation of Israel, we don't want to co-parent with them when it comes to war, right? Rather than acknowledging and submitting to the will of the people, they're now burying this in a defense bill. This is opposed by Representative Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna. They tried to strip it, arguing that Netanyahu's government is rewarded amidst declining U.S. public support for Israel. In fact, 60% of Americans now have unfavorable views of Israel, and that number is tanking. It also, this is the worst aspect of this, is that it's shifting the money that is deployed to Israel from a transparent package, which would be foreign aid, to the very opaque, and some would say black Pentagon budgets. It's a Pentagon procurement and industrial integration. So this is, we have no way to scrutinize what is happening here. It binds the U.S. to Israel long-term. It entrenches this nation into the mechanism of war and our defense spending long-term. It reduces congressional oversight, transparency, and leverage over how much money is spent and where the money is spent. It completely alienates the American people who clearly are opposed to this, and it aligns with visions of Israel launching preventative wars while harnessing U.S. power. So this is bad. This was bad. Slipped into a must-pass NDAA bill. So we're going to keep, this is another point. It makes reversal very hard. And this is a key point. Integrated industries, shared IP, data fusion, and joint projects can create inertia. Congress could theoretically defund it later, but practically it will be locked in place via the bureaucracy, the industry lobbying, and the military dependence. These critics call it future-proofing the relationship against shifting U.S. public opinion and administrations, right? So they're going to make it, it's not going to matter. Again, another destruction of our democracy, our constitutional republic, the will of the people, the voice of the people, the consent of the governed, all of this stripped out. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. So thank you to Tom Massie and Ro Khanna for spearheading the opposition to this. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to stop this, but we should do everything that we possibly can. It's going to be trickier because it's in a defense bill, a defense spending bill. And as we know, Catherine Austin Fitts says that the defense budget is where all of the black money goes. It's where they go. It's where they launder all of the money. We don't have access. I think that Catherine Austin Fitts would say that trillions upon trillions have been stolen from the American people by some of these black budgets. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So that piece is linked in the show notes of the Shannon Joy Show from a couple days ago. Again, it was a Guardian piece. Hat tip to Eli Clifton and Ian Lustick for that overview. It was a very, very good overview. All right, guys, that is the show today. I know I threw a lot at you. Today was a heavy show and a lot on the economy, a lot on the markets, a lot on this growing alliance between the United States government and Israel, the president of the United States and the tech bros and the billionaire class. It's heavy right now as we're trying to process and get a handle on all of the changes that are coming. And that's not easy to do. And so I appreciate all of you for sticking with me today. We'll have a little more fun tomorrow. With Ed Dowd. Of course, that's going to be pretty heavy too. But we'll hit some other topics as well. Yeah. Hey D, good to see you. So thank you guys for being with us today on the Shannon Joy Show. Thank you to our sponsors, the folks over at the Satellite Phone Store, the Wellness Company, Peter Schiff over at Schiff Gold, and of course, our friends over at PCM and Associates. Could not bring the show to you every day without them. So we appreciate them. Thank you all for being with us today. We will be back tomorrow to do it all again right here on the Shannon Joy Show.